The lights in the small room glowed soft blue as Elena Vasquez sat cross-legged on her bed, a tablet resting on her knees. Across from her, her roommate Kiraveth, who everyone called Kira, was struggling with the combat simulation on her own screen, and her delicate wings fluttered with frustration. "I cannot do this," Kira said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The program wants me to strike the target, but my body was not made for striking things." Elena looked up and smiled at her friend. Kira was beautiful in a way that humans rarely saw. Her body was slender and covered in soft fur that shifted between purple and silver. Her wings were like those of a moth, but larger and more elegant, and her big dark eyes reflected the room's light like pools of ink. She was a Villani, a species known for their peaceful nature and their incredible skill at navigating starships through the most dangerous parts of space. "Come here," Elena said, patting the space next to her on the bed. "Let me show you something." Kira floated over. Her wings carried her gently through the low gravity of the station and settled beside the human cadet. Elena took Kira's tablet and began to work through the simulation, but she did it differently than the program expected. "See, the instructors want you to fight like a Torvak or a Gorlathi," Elena explained. "But you are not them, and you should not try to be them. Your strength is not in your fists. It is in your mind and your speed. Watch how I complete this level without throwing a single punch." On the screen, the simulation avatar dodged and weaved, used the environment as a weapon, and turned the enemy's strength against itself. Kira watched with growing wonder as Elena finished the level with a perfect score. "You make it look so easy," Kira whispered. "It is not easy," Elena replied, "but nothing worth doing ever is. Now you try." This was how most of their evenings went at the Galactic Coalition Military Academy on Station Verath 7. The massive orbital structure housed cadets from dozens of different species, all training to serve in the Coalition's military forces, and Elena and Kira had been assigned as roommates on the very first day. Elena remembered that day well. She had walked into the common area with her bag over her shoulder, and every alien in the room had turned to stare at her with fear in their eyes. She was human, a species from a death world called Earth, a planet where the gravity was crushing. The weather was violent, and the creatures had evolved to hunt and kill in ways that made other species shudder. The whispers had followed her everywhere. "Persistence hunter," they said. "Deathworlder," they called her. "Her kind chases prey until it dies from exhaustion," they warned each other. No one would sit near her in the dining hall, no one would partner with her in training exercises, and no one would even meet her eyes. But Kira had been different. On that first lonely night, when Elena sat alone at a table meant for 8, a soft voice had spoken from behind her. "May I sit with you?" Elena had turned to find the most fragile-looking creature she had ever seen, a being of light and gossamer wings who should have been terrified of a predator species like humans. But Kira's dark eyes held no fear, only curiosity and kindness. "Everyone else is afraid of me," Elena had said. "Why are you not?" Kira had tilted her head in that way she did when she was thinking deeply. "On my home world, there is a creature called the silver vine. It looks dangerous with its thorns and its dark color, but it produces the sweetest fruit and provides shelter for smaller creatures. I have learned that appearances tell us very little about the truth of a being's heart." She had sat down and shared her meal with Elena, strange fruits and sweet nectar that tasted like nothing the human had ever experienced, and from that moment, they had been inseparable. Elena had never had a friend like Kira, someone who saw past the predator and found the person underneath. Now, months later, they were more than roommates. They were sisters in every way that mattered, bonded by late-night conversations and shared struggles, and the kind of trust that only grows between souls who truly see each other. The door to their quarters slid open with a soft hiss, and both cadets looked up. Standing in the doorway were three massive figures, Torvak cadets, their scaled bodies blocking the light from the corridor, their yellow eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. The leader was Draven Koss, the largest and meanest of them all. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his teeth were visible even when his mouth was closed. He was the son of a famous Torvak general, and he never let anyone forget it. "Well, well," Draven rumbled, his voice like stones grinding together. "The little moth and her pet ape, how sweet." Elena felt her body go still in that way it always did when danger was near. Her heart rate slowed, her breathing became shallow, and her muscles relaxed into a state of terrible readiness. This was the persistence hunter's response, the ancient programming that had allowed her ancestors to chase prey across endless savannas until the prey simply could not run anymore. "What do you want, Draven?" Elena asked, her voice calm and flat. "Just reminding you both of your place," Draven sneered. "The Crucible trials are coming and real warriors will compete for glory. Perhaps your little moth friend can clean the arena floor when we are done. It is all her kind is good for." Kira's wings drooped, and Elena saw the hurt in her friend's eyes. Something dark stirred in Elena's chest, something old and patient and very, very dangerous. "Leave," Elena said. Just one word, spoken softly. Draven laughed and turned away, his cadre following him down the corridor. But before he disappeared, he looked back with hatred burning in his reptilian eyes. "This is not over, human." Elena watched him go, then turned to comfort her friend. But deep inside her, in the place where the predator lived, a promise was being made. A promise that would soon be written in blood and remembered for generations. The Crucible trials were coming, and Elena Vasquez would be ready. The days before the Crucible trials passed quickly, filled with extra training sessions and nervous energy that spread through the academy like a fever. Every cadet was talking about the ancient tournament, about the glory that awaited the victors, and about the legends who had made their names in that blood-soaked arena beneath the station. Elena trained harder than ever, pushing her human body to its limits and beyond. She ran until her legs burned, she fought until her knuckles bled, and she practiced techniques that other species could barely watch without feeling sick. Humans were not the strongest beings in the galaxy, and they were not the fastest, but they were something far more terrifying. They simply refused to stop. "You should enter the trials," Kira said one evening as she watched Elena finish her workout. "I have seen you fight in training, and you are better than you believe." Elena wiped sweat from her forehead and shook her head. "The trials are for warriors seeking glory. I am just trying to survive long enough to graduate." "That is not true," Kira replied with that gentle wisdom that always surprised Elena. "I see what you are, even if you hide it from yourself. There is a fire inside you. Elena, a strength that frightens even you sometimes. The trials would let you show everyone what humans truly are." Elena was about to respond when the training room door opened and Draven Koss walked in with 4 of his Torvak followers. They spread out to block the exits, and Elena felt that familiar stillness settle over her body. "Look what we have here," Draven said with mock surprise, the Deathworlder and her fragile little companion. "I have been wanting to talk to you, human." "Then talk," Elena replied, her voice carrying no emotion at all. Draven moved closer, and his followers tightened the circle around them. Kira's wings trembled, and she pressed herself against Elena's side. "You do not belong here," Draven growled. "Humans are newcomers to the coalition. You have not earned the right to train alongside real warriors. Your kind are nothing but animals pretending to be civilized, and everyone knows it." "Is that all?" Elena asked. Something dangerous flashed in Draven's yellow eyes. He was not used to being dismissed, and Elena's calm was making him furious. "I am going to win the Crucible trials," Draven snarled, leaning close enough that Elena could smell his breath. And when I do, I will make sure everyone remembers that humans are weak, that your precious persistence means nothing against true strength. Perhaps I will demonstrate on your little moth friend first." Elena smiled then, a small, cold expression that made even the Torvak hesitate. "You talk very much. I wonder if you will have anything left to say when words are no longer enough?" For a long moment no one moved. Then Draven laughed, a harsh, ugly sound, and stepped back. "Brave words from a small creature. Enjoy your remaining days of peace, human." He left with his followers, and Elena finally allowed herself to breathe. Kira was shaking beside her, and Elena put a protective arm around her friend's thin shoulders. "He is all talk," Elena said softly. "He will not hurt you." But even as she spoke the words, a cold feeling settled in her stomach, a hunter's instinct warning her that the prey had become the predator and something terrible was approaching. 3 nights later, Elena returned to their quarters after a late study session. The moment the door opened, she knew something was wrong. The room was destroyed, furniture overturned, tablets smashed, Kira's beautiful collection of star charts torn to pieces and scattered across the floor. And Kira was gone. Elena's heart stopped for one terrible second. Then she was moving, running through the corridors of the station with a speed that made other cadets leap out of her way. She checked every place Kira might be, the library, the observation deck, the dining hall, but her friend was nowhere to be found. Finally, a frightened Villani cadet told her the truth. "They found her in Maintenance Corridor 7. She is in the medical bay." Elena did not remember the journey to the medical bay. One moment she was standing in the corridor, and the next she was bursting through the doors with wild eyes and clenched fists. What she saw stopped her cold. Kira lay in a healing pod, her small body broken in ways that made Elena want to scream. Her beautiful wings were torn, ripped and shredded as if by cruel claws, and her bioluminescence flickered weakly like a candle about to go out. Cuts and bruises covered her delicate form, and the medical officers moved around her with grim expressions. "What happened?" Elena whispered, though she already knew the answer. A medic turned to face her. "She was found unconscious in a maintenance corridor. Someone beat her very badly. We think she may never fly again." Elena walked slowly to the healing pod and pressed her hand against the glass. Kira looked so small, so fragile, so broken. "Was there any evidence?" Elena asked, her voice strange and distant. "Just this," the medic replied, and showed Elena an image on a tablet, a wall in the maintenance corridor, and scratched into the metal in Torvak's script was one word: "Vermin!" Elena stared at that word for a long time. Something was happening inside her. Something ancient and terrible was waking up, stretching after a long sleep, opening its eyes in the dark. She sat beside Kira's pod for 6 hours without moving. She did not cry. She did not speak. She barely seemed to breathe. Medical staff came and went, but Elena remained still as stone, and something in her eyes made them afraid to disturb her. When Kira finally woke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Elena?" "I am here," Elena replied, taking her friend's hand through the port in the healing pod. "Please," Kira breathed. "Do not do anything dangerous. I could not bear it if you were hurt because of me." Elena leaned forward and kissed Kira's forehead with infinite gentleness. "Rest now, my friend. I will handle everything." She left the medical bay and walked directly to the registration terminal for the Crucible trials. The screen glowed before her, asking which format she wished to enter. Elena selected the option at the very bottom of the list, the one that made the computer ask 3 times if she was certain, the one that had not been used in decades. Open combat rules. No restrictions, no referee stoppage, no mercy. An academy officer tried to stop her. "Cadet Vasquez, open combat rules mean the fight continues until one participant cannot continue. Do you understand what that means?" "Yes," Elena said, and signed her name. Word spread quickly through the academy, and by the end of the day, everyone knew that the human cadet had entered the Crucible trials under the most brutal format possible. When Draven Koss saw Elena's name on the bracket, he laughed so hard that his followers had to help him stand. "The little human wants to die for her pet," he roared. "I will be happy to arrange that." But deep in the station, in the ancient arena where blood had been spilled for thousands of years, something stirred in the darkness, as if the stones themselves could sense what was coming, and they were hungry. The arena was older than the coalition itself, a massive coliseum built by a species that had vanished from the galaxy long before any current civilization had learned to walk upright. It sat in the deepest part of Station Virath 7, carved from ancient stone that seemed to drink in the light and whisper secrets to those who listened too closely. Elena stood at the entrance to the combat floor and looked up at the towering walls, the thousands of seats filled with cadets and officers and dignitaries from across the galaxy. Hard light barriers shimmered at the edges of the arena, and the floor was covered in sand that had absorbed the blood of countless warriors over millennia. "Cadet Vasquez," announced the voice of the arena master, echoing through the vast space, "you have entered under open combat rules. Do you understand that matches under these rules continue until one combatant is unable to fight and that there will be no referee intervention?" "I understand," Elena replied, her voice calm. "Then may the ancient stones judge you worthy. Your first opponent is Crixtal of the Crixian Empire." The creature that emerged from the opposite gate was terrifying. An insectoid being with 4 arms that ended in razor-sharp blades, compound eyes that tracked movement with mechanical precision, and an exoskeleton that gleamed like polished armor. The Crixian stood nearly 3 meters tall and moved with the liquid grace of a born killer. The crowd roared with excitement. This was what they had come to see, the small human cadet being torn apart by a superior predator. Elena walked to the center of the arena and stopped. She did not take a fighting stance. She did not raise her fists. She simply stood there and watched the Crixian approach with those terrible bladed arms raised to strike. The starting horn sounded, and Crixtal attacked. What happened next made the entire arena fall silent. The Crixian was fast, faster than any human could hope to match, and its first strike should have cut Elena in half. But Elena was not where the blade landed. She had moved at the last possible moment, stepping just far enough to let the weapon pass by her face close enough to feel the wind. The Crixian struck again and again, and each time Elena avoided death by the smallest possible margin. She was not running, she was not retreating, she was learning, watching, waiting, and then she struck back. Elena's fist connected with a joint in the Crixian's lower arm, hitting with perfect precision at the exact point where the exoskeleton was weakest. There was a crack like breaking glass, and the arm went limp. The crowd gasped. Crixtal screamed in rage and attacked with its remaining 3 arms, but something had changed. The human was no longer just avoiding the blows, she was moving forward, closing the distance, getting inside the reach of those deadly blades. Elena used the Crixian's own momentum against it, redirecting strikes that should have killed her and turning them into openings. She broke another arm. Then another, each strike delivered with cold precision to the exact point where it would do the most damage. When the Crixian tried to retreat, Elena followed. When it tried to circle, Elena cut off its path. When it tried to use its size to overwhelm her, Elena simply took the hits that connected, blows that would have killed other species, and kept coming. This was what humans were, persistence hunters, creatures evolved to chase prey across endless distances until the prey simply could not run anymore. Elena's ancestors had hunted by exhausting their targets, and now that ancient programming was written across her face in an expression of patient, merciless determination. The Crixian was slowing, its compound eyes flickering with something that might have been fear. This small creature should have died a dozen times. But she would not fall. She just kept coming, kept striking, kept breaking pieces off. 5 minutes into the fight, Elena wrapped her arm around the Crixian's throat and squeezed. The insectoid struggled, thrashed, tried to reach her with its one remaining functional arm, and then it went limp. Elena released her opponent and stood over its unconscious body. The arena was completely silent, thousands of beings staring at the small human who had just defeated a Crixian warrior in single combat. Then someone began to clap, slowly at first, then faster, and soon the whole arena was thundering with applause and stamping feet. But Elena did not acknowledge the crowd. She simply turned and walked back to the competitor's gate. Her second opponent never entered the arena. A Valathi warrior who had been favored to reach the final rounds suddenly discovered an old injury that prevented him from fighting. Her third opponent was a Gorlathi, a massive creature of muscle and bone that towered over Elena like a mountain. The Gorlathi had won every match it had ever fought through sheer overwhelming force. The fight lasted 4 minutes. Elena avoided the crushing blows that would have turned her to paste, and she delivered precise strikes to the soft tissue between the Gorlathi's armor-like skin. When the giant finally fell, it was not from one massive injury but from dozens of small ones. Internal bleeding, ruptured organs, damaged nerves. The crowd no longer cheered. They watched in horrified silence as the human cadet walked away from another broken opponent. This was not the glorious combat they had expected. This was something else, something old and dark and terrifying. Whispers spread through the stands. "Her kind chases prey until it dies," someone said. "They never stop, they never tire, they just keep coming until there is nothing left to chase." Draven Koss watched from across the arena, and for the first time there was something other than contempt in his yellow eyes. There was doubt. "Perhaps we should withdraw," his lieutenant suggested. "The human is more dangerous than we thought." "No," Draven growled, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "I am Torvak. We do not flee from vermin." In the competitor's alcove, Elena sat alone on a stone bench and slowly wrapped her torn and bleeding knuckles. She had broken bones in her hands. She could feel them grinding together when she moved, but she had ignored pain before, and she would ignore it now. An academy instructor approached her carefully, as one might approach a wounded predator. "Cadet Vasquez, are you all right?" Elena looked up, and the instructor took a step back. The human's eyes were empty, not angry, not sad, not anything. Just void, like staring into a black hole that would swallow everything that fell into it. "I will be," Elena said softly. Tomorrow was the final round. Tomorrow she would face Draven Koss in the ancient arena where blood had been spilled for 1,000 generations. Tomorrow she would show the galaxy what happened when you hurt the people a human loved. The stones of the arena seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if they remembered the old times when warriors had fought and died for honor and revenge. They had seen countless champions come and go, but they had never seen anything quite like Elena Vasquez, and they were hungry for what was to come. The final day of the Crucible trials arrived with a strange energy that seemed to electrify the entire station. Cadets who had never cared about the tournament pushed and shoved for seats in the arena. Officers from the Coalition's main fleet tuned in through remote viewing screens, and betting pools across 3-star systems were overflowing with wagers on the outcome. Everyone wanted to see the same thing, the small human cadet against the Torvak champion. Elena woke before the station's artificial dawn and spent an hour in silent meditation, letting her mind settle into the cold, empty place where the predator lived. Her hands were wrapped in healing gel. Her body was covered in bruises from the previous fights. But none of that mattered. Pain was just information, and she had learned long ago to file that information away and keep moving. In the medical bay, Kira remained in her healing pod, but someone had set up a viewing screen so she could watch the final match. Her wings were slowly regenerating, and the doctor said she might fly again someday. But the fear in her eyes when she learned what Elena was about to do was sharper than any physical wound. "Please," Kira whispered through the communication system. "You have proven yourself. You do not need to fight him." "Yes," Elena replied, her voice soft but firm. "I do." She ended the call and walked toward the arena. The roar of the crowd hit Elena like a physical force when she emerged from the competitor's gate. The ancient Colosseum was packed beyond capacity, with beings standing in the aisles and hanging from the support beams, all of them staring at the small human who had become the tournament's dark horse. From the opposite gate, Draven Koss emerged in full ceremonial glory. His scales had been painted with Torvak war markings, his claws had been sharpened to deadly points, and his yellow eyes burned with the pride and fury of a warrior who had never known defeat. The crowd cheered for him. He was the favorite, the champion of a proud warrior race, the being everyone expected to restore order to a tournament that had been turned upside down by an upstart human. Elena walked to the center of the arena and stopped. She wore no ceremonial paint, carried no weapons, displayed no emotion. She simply stood there in her standard training uniform and waited. The arena master's voice boomed across the Colosseum. "The final match of the Crucible Trials, Draven Koss of the Torvak Dominion versus Elena Vasquez of Earth. This match is conducted under open combat rules. There will be no intervention until one combatant cannot continue. Fighters, approach." Draven strode forward until he stood just a few meters from Elena, towering over her like a mountain of muscle and scales. He was twice her size, his arms were thick with combat training, and his claws could tear through metal. "Look at you," Draven sneered, his voice carrying to every corner of the arena. "So small, so fragile, just like your pathetic moth friend." Elena said nothing. "She screamed, you know," Draven continued, his lips pulling back to reveal rows of sharp teeth. "When we tore her wings, she begged us to stop. Perhaps when I am done breaking you, I will visit her again and finish what we—" He never finished the sentence. Elena moved. One moment she was standing still, and the next she was inside Draven's guard, her fist driving into his throat with all the force her human body could generate. The Torvak's words turned into a strangled gurgle, and he stumbled backward with shock written across his reptilian face. The crowd fell silent. Elena did not wait for Draven to recover. She attacked with a fury that was somehow both wild and perfectly controlled. Her strikes landed on joints and pressure points and the soft places between his scales, each blow delivered with precision learned from watching Kira's broken body in that healing pod. Draven tried to fight back, swinging his massive arms with enough force to crush stone, but Elena was never where his strikes landed. She flowed around his attacks like water around rock, always moving, always striking, always finding new places to cause pain. The Torvak landed a blow. His fist connected with Elena's shoulder and sent her spinning across the arena sand. But she rolled with the impact and was back on her feet in an instant, blood running from a cut on her head, but her eyes still empty, still focused, still terrible. "Stand still!" Draven roared, and there was fear in his voice now. Real fear. Elena did not answer with words. She answered with violence. She broke his wrist when he tried to grab her, snapping the bones with a joint lock that made even the hardened warriors in the crowd wince. She ruptured something in his knee when he tried to kick her, driving her heel into the joint with devastating precision. She slammed him into the arena wall so hard that cracks spread through the ancient stone. This was not a fight. It was a systematic destruction. Draven tried to yield. He raised his remaining good hand and opened his mouth to speak the words that would end the match, but under open combat rules. Yield must be accepted by the opponent, and Elena simply hit him in the jaw before the words could come out. "You do not get to yield," Elena said, speaking for the first time since the match began. "Kira begged you to stop, and you did not listen. Now you will learn how that feels." The crowd watched in horrified silence as Elena took Draven apart piece by piece. She broke things inside him that Torvak medicine would struggle to repair. Damaged nerves, ruptured organs, shattered bones that would heal wrong and cause pain for the rest of his life. She was not trying to kill him. She was doing something worse. She was making sure he would never forget this moment, never walk without pain, never grip a weapon properly, never look in a mirror without remembering what a human had done to him. The arena's medical officers looked to the officials, asking permission to intervene, but the rules were clear. Open combat continued until one fighter could not continue, and somehow, impossibly, Dravenkos kept trying to fight. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was only minutes, Elena delivered a strike to Draven's leg that made a sound like a branch breaking. The Torvak collapsed to the blood-soaked sand, unable to rise, his body broken in a dozen places. Elena stood over him, not even breathing hard, her face still empty of emotion. Then she knelt beside his shattered form and leaned close so only he could hear. "You touched my friend," Elena whispered, her voice soft and cold as space itself. "You will live with what I have left you. Every morning you wake in pain. Every time you reach for something and your hand fails you. Every step that sends agony shooting through your body. You will remember this moment, and you will remember why. Humans protect what we love, and we do not forgive." She stood and walked away, leaving Dravenkos broken and whimpering in the sand. The arena was silent, not the excited silence of anticipation, but the stunned silence of beings who had just witnessed something they would never forget. Elena Vasquez, human cadet from the Luna colony, had just shown the galaxy what happened when you hurt someone a human loved. The medical officers rushed onto the arena floor to tend to Draven's broken body. In the stands, thousands of beings sat in shock, their understanding of humans forever changed. And deep in the ancient stones of the arena, something seemed to sigh with satisfaction, as if the old Colosseum had finally seen a warrior worthy of the blood that had been spilled on its floor for 1,000 generations. Elena walked through the competitor's gate and disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind only the legend that would spread across the stars. The week following the Crucible trials was filled with chaos and controversy. News of the human cadets' brutal victory spread across Coalition space like wildfire, and opinions were sharply divided between those who called Elena a savage and those who called her a hero. The Academy convened a disciplinary tribunal to review the events of the final match. The charges were serious: excessive violence, conduct unbecoming a cadet, and willful infliction of permanent injury. If found guilty, Elena could be expelled and possibly imprisoned. Elena sat alone in the hearing chamber, her hands folded in her lap, her face calm and unreadable. Across from her sat a panel of senior officers from 5 different species, their expressions ranging from stern disapproval to barely concealed curiosity. "Cadet Vasquez," the tribunal chairman began, a stern Colarian with silver skin and 4 arms, "you are accused of using excessive violence in a sanctioned combat tournament. Your opponent, Dravenkos, will require months of medical treatment and may never fully recover from his injuries. What do you have to say in your defense?" Elena was quiet for a long moment before responding. The match was conducted under open combat rules, which both participants agreed to before entering the arena. I fought within those rules. "The rules permit violence," another officer interjected. "They do not require it to be so brutal. You could have ended the match much sooner." "Yes," Elena agreed simply. "I could have." The admission hung in the air, heavy with implication. Elena was not denying what she had done. She was owning it. Before the tribunal could continue, the chamber doors opened and a procession entered that made everyone stand in surprise. It was a delegation of Villani, dressed in the formal robes of their diplomatic corps, and at their head was an elderly female whose bioluminescence shimmered with the soft gold that marked her as a member of one of the oldest families. "I am Ambassador Kira Moth," the elderly Villani announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had negotiated peace treaties between warring empires. "I am here to speak on behalf of my family and the Villani people." "Ambassador," the chairman sputtered. "This is an internal academy matter. My granddaughter lies in your medical bay with her wings torn from her body," the ambassador interrupted, her voice hard as diamond. "I believe that makes this very much my concern. I have a statement to read into the record." The tribunal had no choice but to allow it. The Villani held significant power in the coalition, and offending their diplomatic corps would have consequences far beyond this hearing. "The Villani people recognize the actions of Cadet Elena Vasquez as honorable protection of a bonded companion," the ambassador declared, her words ringing through the chamber. "Under our most ancient customs, when one soul bonds with another, they become responsible for each other's welfare. To attack one is to attack both, and the response of the protector is not only permitted, it is expected and honored." She turned to look directly at Elena, and something passed between them. A recognition, an understanding, a bond between two beings who both loved Kira. "We formally request that all charges against Cadet Vasquez be dismissed, and we place the protection of the Villani diplomatic mission upon her person." The tribunal members exchanged uncertain glances. Diplomatic protection meant that any action against Elena would be considered an insult to the entire Villani people. It was a serious gesture that was rarely invoked. More witnesses came forward, and the tribunal's certainty began to crumble. Cadets who had previously been afraid to speak testified about the Torvax campaign of harassment and intimidation. Medical records were presented showing a pattern of accidents that had injured smaller species, and 3 of Draven's own followers broke ranks and confessed their role in the attack on Kira. By the end of the hearing, the story had completely changed. Elena was no longer the accused. She was the hero who had stood up against a bully when the Academy's systems had failed. The tribunal's ruling was swift. All charges against Cadet Elena Vasquez were dismissed, and the remaining members of Draven Koss's group were suspended pending a full investigation into their conduct. Elena walked out of the hearing chamber and went directly to the medical bay. Kira was sitting up in her healing pod, her wings still bandaged, but her eyes bright with tears. "You are not expelled?" Kira asked, her voice trembling with hope. "No," Elena replied, taking her friend's hand. "I am not expelled." "I watched the fight," Kira said softly. "I saw what you did to him. I did not know you had that inside you." Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke with careful honesty. "Neither did I. But when I saw what they did to you, when I saw your wings torn and your light flickering out, something woke up inside me, something old and dark. I do not know if what I did was right, Kira. I only know that I would do it again without hesitation." Kira squeezed Elena's hand. "You are my sister in every way that matters. What you did was not right or wrong. It was love. Sometimes love is gentle and sometimes it is fierce. I have learned to accept both." They sat together in comfortable silence, 2 friends from different worlds who had found in each other something precious and rare. Over the following weeks, everything changed at the Academy. The whispers about humans continued, but they had a different tone now, less fear, more respect. Cadets who had once crossed the corridor to avoid Elena now nodded to her as she passed, and some even stopped to talk. One day, a group of alien cadets approached Elena in the training room. There was a Velothi, a small Kolarian, and two beings from species that Elena did not recognize, all of them smaller and weaker than the dominant species at the academy. "We wanted to ask you something," the Velothi said nervously. "We have heard about how you fight, about how humans use persistence and precision instead of raw strength. Would you be willing to teach us?" Elena looked at them. These beings who had probably spent their whole academy careers being pushed around by larger species, and she saw something familiar in their eyes. They were survivors, just like her. "I can teach you," Elena replied, and she smiled for the first time since Kira had been hurt. "But I warn you, human training is not easy. We will start with endurance." The small group gathered around her, eager and nervous, and Elena began to show them the techniques that had served her ancestors across countless generations. In that moment, something new was born, a training tradition that would spread across the academy and eventually across the coalition, changing how smaller species thought about combat forever. Years later, long after Elena had graduated and risen to command her own ship, a famous historian wrote about that day in the arena. His words would be quoted in academies and war colleges across the galaxy for generations to come. On that day in the ancient arena, the galaxy learned something that the old species had tried to warn them about. Humans are not the strongest beings in the universe, and they are not the fastest. Their senses are dull compared to many species, and their bodies are fragile. But when you harm something they love, when you threaten their family, their friends, their bonded companions, they become something else entirely. They become patient and relentless, calm and terrible, focused with a precision that borders on madness. The Torvak called them Deathworlders as an insult. But they did not understand. It was never an insult. It was a warning. Do not mistake human kindness for weakness. Do not assume that their small size makes them prey. And above all, never ever hurt someone they love. For if you do, you will learn too late what it means to be hunted by a species that simply does not stop. And somewhere in the stars, Elena Vasquez continued to serve, to protect, and to teach others the lesson she had written in blood on the sand of an ancient arena. That love is the most powerful force in the universe, and that there is nothing more dangerous than a human with something to fight for. The arena still stands on Station Vareth 7, and they say that on quiet nights, you can still feel the echoes of that day. The day a small human cadet showed the galaxy what it truly means to be a Deathworlder. Some lessons, after all, are never forgotten.